Chapter 277. Inquiring about heavenly chants. It should be seal the king, some people guessed, feeling that sealing the king was the most likely. After all, the ushering stage was not the same as the Jidan stage, and there was a huge difference between the two. However, there were also people who felt that since Kangchon was able to break the limits of the Jidan stage in the first place, and was able to achieve 50 times the result above the forged one stone, this was enough to show that he was superhumanly gifted, and that this time, perhaps it was a direct king sealing might also be possible. Couldn't it possibly be a direct seal of invincibility? Someone said this, yet he was greeted by a crowd of mockery. How could it be that easy to seal invincibility at the ushering stage? Although with Kangchon's talent, sealing invincibility at the ushering stage in the future was inevitable, the crowd felt that he couldn't, at least not yet. After all, from 3 years ago, Kangchon was still at the Jidan stage. It can be seen that his breakthrough to the ushering stage must not be long. To be able to reach the 7th layer of the ushering stage cultivation is already very good. Want to directly seal the invincible? I am afraid that it will need to be more than 10 years before it can be done. Under the gazes of the crowd, Kangchon and Xiaojin walked along with the law enforcement elder through a section of the pathway, finally entering the interior of Dark Gold Peak. Before you prepare to go to the orthodox demon battlefield, make another trip to my master's place, in front of a dark golden palace, the law enforcement elder said to Kangchon. Kangchon nodded, and then bid farewell to the law enforcement elder. Leaving the place where the law enforcement elder resided, Kangchon and Little Gold began to head to the bamboo forest hut where they lived. It's only been 3 years. I'm afraid third senior brother hasn't returned from the orthodox demon battlefield yet, Kangchon thought in his heart. During the time he was traveling to the bamboo forest hut, Kangchon also passed by the Lijuan Hall and had a few words with that elderly. Elderly had also changed a lot during these 3 years. Now that he had stabilized his harmonization stage cultivation, he had become a sealed elder of the Heavenly Tao sect, and he had also obtained his heart's desire, accepting Zhu Wuan as his personal disciple, so it could be said that he was glowing with red. He was very happy to see Kangchon and said with a smile, "Little fellow, come to the forged one stone test to see what kind of strength your kid has after breaking through the ushering stage." Last time, Kangchon tested out 50 times at the Jidan stage, which shocked him greatly, and from then on, he knew that Kangchon's talent couldn't be described by common sense. Therefore, he was curious as to what kind of strength Kangchon would have for his breakthrough this time. Not only elderly, I'm afraid that the other law enforcement disciples above the Dark Gold Peak were also curious in their hearts. However, thinking about his current state, Kangchon shook his head and smiled bitterly. Some other day. There's no way I can test it in my current state. He had just finished his calamity and had suffered a serious injury, with only one of his strength remaining. So where was there a way to test it? Little Gold on the side also said loudly, "Old Grandpa, my brother just finished his calamity and was seriously injured. Let's test next time." "But I, Little Gold, can test, he finished his calamity." Elderly was shocked at his words. He instantly understood the terrifying nature of Kangchon's talent. Advancing to the ushering stage and also being able to ferry a calamity amongst the special bloodlines, it was also a top-notch existence. Then he looked at Little Gold. Elderly was a bit surprised and said, "You are that little monkey, right? I didn't expect that you have already transformed into a form. Well, your talent is also good. Old me's very curious about your strength. Come and try." Saying that, Elderly brought Little Gold to the side of the forged one stone. Kangchon was also very curious about Xiaojin's strength after his breakthrough, and watched carefully from the side. At this moment, the other people in the forged one hall also gathered around when they saw Kangchon enter. They had thought that it was Kangchon who had come to test But it turned out that they hadn't expected a young man who looked similar to Kang Chon to come up, and they couldn't help but feel some curiosity in their hearts. At first, the crowd was unable to guess Little Gold's identity, but after a divine separation stage, Sun exclaimed out, "He's that little monkey, the golden-haired monkey that often follows Kang Chon." After these words, Little Jin's identity was instantly exposed, so many people were curious and wanted to see what Little Jin's test score was. "Little One, start." Elder Lee smiled and said to Little Gold, who was standing next to the forced Juan stone. The others in the Great Hall immediately opened their eyes wide and carefully watched the forced Juan stone, as well as Little Gold's skinny figure. Roar! Hearing Elder Lee's words, Xiao Jin let out an angry roar, and his entire body directly went berserk. Before he executed the third stance of the fighting fist, Battle Heaven and Battle Earth. After Little Gold's fist landed on top of the forced Juan stone, this magical stone immediately erupted with a burst of blinding light. In the crowd's shocked gazes, a clear 23 slowly emerged, emitting a blinding golden light. 2, 10, 3, sealed emperors, someone said in a trembling voice. Immediately, a sound of pouring cold air came out from the Great Hall, and many people stared wide-eyed, feeling unbelievable. Elder Lee was also very shocked. His eyes were colorful. He felt more and more that he couldn't see through this little golden-haired monkey. What kind of species was it that had such a talent? I'm afraid that the only one who was calm at this moment was Kang Chon. Knowing where Little Gold came from, he wasn't surprised by the results of this test. Little Gold did have such strength. In the Powers One Hall, a group of law enforcement disciples stared in disbelief. They were a little disbelieving that the little monkey that followed Kang Chon's arse had Yuanying stage imperial strength. This was too shocking. This monkey's origin is not simple, a true disciple sighed, his gaze blazing at Little Gold, but he was unable to see through Little Gold's origins. The crowd's hearts were turned upside down. Even Little Gold had this kind of strength. So what about Kang Chon? Was there any need to speculate on this? It was definitely at the invincible level. Elder Lee looked at Kang Chon and Little Gold. His heart was overwhelmed with emotion. This is only 3 years of time. It has already grown so fast. After a few more decades, I really don't know what level it will grow to. No wonder the law enforcement elder was willing to make an exception to accept another personal disciple. His old man's vision is still so poisonous. The crowd sighed in their hearts. The sun was setting, and the afterglow of the setting sun spilled in through the gaps between the bamboo forests. In the middle of the bamboo forest, a waterfall seemed to hang upside down like the Milky Way, and next to it was a humble hut, bathed in this lazy afterglow. It's been a month. Finally, I've fully recovered from my injuries. Inside the cabin, Kang Chon opened his radiant eyes, a domineering aura looming, his entire person emitting a heavy oppressive force. He had closed his eyes to heal his injuries after returning from the forced Juan Hall, and now that a month had passed, he had finally recovered from his injuries. Moreover, his cultivation at the 7th level of the Yuanying stage had completely stabilized. "Brother, are we going back to the Great Tang country?" Noticing that Kang Chon had awakened, Little Gold hurriedly ran over and asked. "HMM." Kang Chon nodded, the light in his eyes flickering. He was already homeward bound at this moment. It had been 10 years. It had been 10 years since he left the Great Tang country. I wonder how Grandpa is doing with that enlightenment leaf. He should have already broken through to the Yuanying stage. Kang Chon's gaze looked towards the sky. At this moment, his heart had long since returned to the Great Tang country. However, before going back, he still had to inquire about those friends from back then. If he remembered correctly, Jin San Xiao, Lei Yun, and the others, at this time, should have already traveled to the Orthodox demon battlefield. After thinking about it, Kang Chon took out a black token from the heaven reversing cauldron, which was the identity symbol of an inner disciple of the Heavenly Tao sect. With this identity, his power in the Heavenly Tao sect increased a lot, and he could go to the Heavenly Tao sect's Chanji Peak and inquire about Jin San Xiao and their whereabouts. The inner disciples were the foundation of the Heavenly Tao sect and were very important to the Heavenly Tao sect. So when each inner disciple left the Heavenly Tao sect, he had to leave behind the relevant information to make it easy for the Heavenly Tao sect to know his whereabouts. This was done to prevent them from dying outside for no reason, and even in the unlikely event that they were killed, they would still leave behind clues so that the law enforcement lineage could avenge their deaths. Of course, if you die in the orthodox demon battlefield, there's nothing you can do about it. Go to Chanji Peak. Kang Chon's eyes were certain as he put away the token and walked out of the wooden house, leaving Dark Gold Peak. Chanji Peak was not far from Dark Gold Peak. After flying for a few moments, Kang Tian arrived at Chanji Peak, and he asked one of the inner disciples that he encountered to find out where the Chanji Hall was located. The Chanji Hall was the information center of the Heavenly Tao sect and was guarded by the Chanji Elder, who was a sealed elder of the harmonious stage and was extremely powerful. I want to check the whereabouts of some inner disciples, Kang Tian said to a Chanji Hall disciple who worked in the Chanji Hall. That Chanji disciple appeared to be very procedural. He closed his eyes without opening them and just said faintly with his mouth, "Inquiring about the whereabouts of the inner disciples is the authority of the inner disciples. Please show the identity token of the inner disciples." Kang Tian didn't care about his arrogant attitude and directly showed his token. Seeing that Kang Tian was an inner disciple, this Chanji disciple's attitude got a little better, or at least opened his eyes, as he said indifferently, "State your name, and the name of the inner disciple you wish to inquire about." In the Hall of Heavenly Mechanics, when one came to inquire about information, one was also required to leave their name, which was also set to prevent fellow disciples from killing each other. Kang Tian finished his name, and then asked, "I want to check Jin San Xiao, Lei Yun, Huo Wanyong, Liu Sui Feng, Zhao Wuji." Kang Tian said more than a dozen names, almost counting all the geniuses from his session. He was curious to know how the geniuses who were in the same session as him were doing now after 3 years had passed. You're asking as if they're all geniuses from the previous session. Kang Tian, this name seems familiar, right? There was a lucky guy in the last session who was exceptionally accepted as a personal disciple by the Elder of Law Enforcement. It can't be you, right? That Chanji disciple looked at Kang Tian with some surprise after hearing that. Although Kang Tian was only an inner disciple, this did not affect his reputation in the Heavenly Tao sect, because the many geniuses appeared in the last Heavenly Tao sect disciple acceptance ceremony. So he received the attention of many Heavenly Tao sect disciples. As a super genius who was exceptionally accepted as a personal disciple by the law enforcement elder, Kang Tian's name was still known by many. And as this Chanji disciple was in charge of information regarding inner disciples, he naturally knew about Kang Tian as well. Last term, 10 years have passed. Did the Heavenly Tao sect not accept any more disciples? Kang Tian's face was filled with doubt as he sniffed. It seems like you must have closed your eyes and cultivated hard during this period of time, not knowing some of the things that happened in the Heavenly Tao sect. This Chanji disciple said with a smile. Learning that Kang Tian was the personal disciple of the law enforcement elder, his attitude turned quickly, with a kind look on his face. Ever since your session of the holy ceremony, the battles in the battlefield between the righteous and the devil have become more and more intense, and both the righteous and the devil paths have already lost dozens of strong harmonization stage practitioners. In order to conserve resources, the sovereign ordered that no more disciples would be collected for the time being, and instead, all efforts would be made to cultivate the geniuses of your generation. This Chanji disciple sighed, to many geniuses appeared in your generation. Several special bloodline possessors alone have appeared. Once they grow up, they will be an indispensable and powerful fighting force for our heavenly Dao sect. Kang Chon was a bit shocked when he heard this. He didn't expect that the battle in the orthodox and demonic battlefield was already so intense. Even the harmonization stage existences had fallen dozens of times. Not only that, the geniuses of your generation are growing very fast. Let me tell you about them one by one. This heavenly Qi disciple then found Kang Chon information about Jin Sanxiao and the others. Kang Chon was very surprised after learning about them, so it turned out that during the time he was in the spirit sealing space, a lot of things had happened outside. Among them were two of the most shining names, which were Dao Yi and Zhao Wuji. Under the cruel environment of the orthodox devil battlefield, the geniuses of Kang Chon's generation were gradually divided into winners and losers. Among them, Dao Yi and Zhao Wuji were the most powerful and had already ascended to the out-of-body stage to become a true disciple